tension is an important part of all music, and really tension and release are the two forces that keep your track interesting, that keep the momentum going, and they're really the driving force that'll take your audience from the beginning of your track until the end of it. Okay, so how do we make tension in a track? Let's start by let's just put in all the tense elements and nothing else, and we'll try to make a track just like that. So let's start with tonal, since that's going to be sort of the easiest one. So let's do that. So we've got this, right? Oops, it's a little bit panned to one side. Okay. So we've got this. How do we make it build up over time? So one of the easiest ways is if we consolidate all this, we can just grab the top note of our arpeggio and just start bumping it up a little bit every couple bars. So that's a super easy way, right? Just move upwards harmonically. Now, we can also do the same thing. We could also just add another melody on top. So let's try using a different synth. Oops, let's grab that same scale plugin. And let's just try throwing another synth on there. That's going to be sort of our top line. Or top, I don't know if that's the right word for that, but okay, so in this one we're gonna make it very sparse, but you'll see kind of what I'm trying to do here. So so that's another easy way, right? We can move up and down, but basically the trend is going upwards, right? We could also use that same thing to make like a bass note type thing. Bass is really helpful for making these sort of things. So actually, why don't we do that with operator? Or when you're making this sort of thing, it does help to have sort of a regular rhythm. But like we saw with this, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just the regularity of a rhythm also creates this sort of tension of like, when is that regularity going to break apart? Or that's my take on it, at least. So okay, let's work with that. And then we can use the same sort of timing as the other one. Okay, so We see, and we got back to A here. All right, so so that's another way. Again, I'm just doing it by pitching up. But yeah, so all those elements together will sort of work to build like a nice pitch build up. The other way you can do it is by pitch bending, right? So you could, instead of a bass note thing, let's make this just a little like wah. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So with this, we can make a pretty simple little thing here. Let's do it a little bit. That's fine for now. Okay, cool. So now let's talk about textural stuff. So one is so the idea with the textural stuff is making it a little bit more harsh, more distorted. So more of the higher frequencies, right?
Here are some main ways you can make your track more tense by changing the texture to something more distorted, more white noisy, more harsh. There's pitch, by pitching up or pitching down slowly, by moving harmonically towards the dominant or a semitone away from the root or some other resolution. And then there's rhythmic, by increasing the rhythm or increasing the perceived speed or the actual speed, or highlighting smaller and smaller subdivisions. There's also, or you can also do it by slowing down to a uncomfortably slow tempo. And honestly, I think one helpful way to think about it is to think of all the most kind of cliche ways that people build tension in a track, and to rethink them in a sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of way. Just try to use those basic ideas in a novel way. So for example, one kind of silly way of making tension that I really enjoy is putting a tone in that doesn't change, but just by virtue of it staying there and not ending, it creates this feeling of, when is this thing going to end? This tension of, this sound is going on for such a long time. When is it going to end? It feels like it should end. And then when it ends, release.
So this is the classic, always works in a pinch. Just open up a filter, right? You could also do it by, for example, distorting another thing, or making something more, I guess this kind of goes back to pitch, but making something a little bit more dissonant. Actually, let's try it on this one. It'll be more fun, I think. Okay, so, as this progresses, we can kind of just bring this in. So that's cool. We can also use reverb to build that sort of thing. Oh, this is a nice textural one. Let's just move through this wavetable. And yeah, we could just build. All right, let's use a little reverb here. So this is another one that I really like, is just making a huge drone like this. And then at the end, we'll just bring it in. Another alternative to this is to put that on a separate chain. And then on this chain, we can put other effects that might be interesting. So for example, maybe on this chain, we also put distortion. And we can just kind of go like this, I guess. And then this one's already full blast, and we're just going to bring that in like this. And it's nice because this can just sort of sit there for quite a long time and then build up at the near the very end, and it will become this sort of overwhelming wash of noise. You could also, for example, frequency shift this to make it a bit more dissonant. We'll get some crazy shit here. So that's a nice touch. We could also pitch it down, for example, at the end. Kind of works. Okay, cool. So that's nice, and it's nice to have it sort of isolated so that we can you know, do different filtering and stuff on it. With our bass, we could add a little bit more of that noise layer, maybe. Okay, cool. And maybe we start off by filtering some of that noise out. That might be. Maybe this one also doesn't come in until later, so we could do something like this to like reveal it a bit later. I might leave this pitch modulation for later because I quite like how that one sounds. So let's just leave it like that. We could even start lower. So it's sort of not really there until later when we need it. This could also probably start lower, actually. Let's start this a little later. Okay, cool. So now we're starting to get somewhere. It's starting to feel a little bit more tense. Now, can you feel it? Can you feel how tense it's getting? What are some other things that we can do? So that's all. That's kind of like, you know, some basic ideas for the texture. You can also do some kind of hacks like this. So for example, if you freeze this, let's grab another track. This is kind of a good hack if your thing's not really working out. We can always just drop this on a little later and transpose it up by an octave. And let's just use texture mode or something. So that'll be pretty cool. On that note, you can also do it an octave below. That might be nice to bring in first, right? So first we get the octave below. You can also just, you know, sometimes it's nice to just drop in a big impact reversed. So could try something like that, maybe. One shot riser, sure. You can always throw these kind of things in, and sometimes it's nice to extend them or whatever. I'm not going to use that because I wanted to show you some different ways of doing it. Okay, cool. So now let's talk about rhythm a little bit. Okay, so say we have so now as we're going along, one way of, the kind of classic way of increasing the perceived rhythm is to just use some hi-hats. So the nice thing about this is that, you know, we already have stuff on the quarter notes, but bringing in a louder sound on the quarter notes will also kind of make it build up by default. So We could also try bringing in something on the offbeat. Another classic sort of example. Right, we're starting to build it up. This is standard shit, right? To kind of round it out, you can also, the 16th note emphasis is always going to be handy too. Right? You could also emphasize this more by starting out a little bit more calm. So, for example, if we just started out with something like this, and let's chop this bad boy out, and we'll replace him with another kick. So we have, this is going to feel slower, I believe. Not sure, but I believe so. So, oh, this should have been, sorry, let's do this instead. Yeah. You could have carried this out a bit longer too, actually. Cool. So that's starting to build. Obviously, filter with, you can use a filter to control sort of the textural effect of, you know, filters are super handy. It's always going to kind of work for you to do like a... You could even start this out slower, right? We could do... Right? Now the next thing that you can do...
So at this point, you probably noticed that the less tense we make it at the, or the more slow and drawn out we make it at the beginning, the more it's going to build up and become more tense at the end. So building tension is not just about making a really big high point at the end. It's also about starting as low as you can so that there's lots of room for that tension to build. Slowness is going to help with that. Muted sounds are going to help with that. Everything that we learned about tension so far is going to help with that.
To make it feel quicker is to increase the perceived the subdivisions that you accent, right? So for example, if we start emphasizing more of these 16th notes, let's group this and put it in a drum rack because I feel like that'll make us, or drum bus. There we go. And then, of course, you know, switching to the dum 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 is always going to be a good. Yeah, let's just slop that in there, and then this, you know, the classic. Now, you know, you can get away from this in a bunch of different ways, right? Now, so we don't have to do that. That is sort of like the cliche way of doing it. But I think you'll notice that even these ones were starting to feel quite intense. And just by repeating those, you know, we'll still get that desired effect. Another kind of fun way of doing it might be to say we were to take this section and offset it by a little bit, and then I think we could just cut out the snares maybe. Let's try that. Let's see if that works. modulation. So, or maybe the other way around, that like the snare comes a tiny bit later. Yeah, let's try that for the next part, actually. Okay, so that'll kind of, but you see what we're doing, right? We're accenting things that are in smaller subdivisions. So by accenting these 16th notes, this 16th note here, we're sort of bringing attention to the smaller subdivisions, and that will make it feel a bit faster. So there's all that stuff, right? Let's quickly talk about some of the more uncommon ways of building tension. I'm going to strip this back quite a bit so that we can kind of focus in on some of the more subtle ways. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to make one long note. So let's go. So that's a nice kind of subtle, more subtle way of building tension. Let's bring the low pass on this bad boy back down, so we have something a little more subtle to work with. So all we're doing now is just making this one note slowly kind of builds. Let's actually get rid of this stuff too. Oops. So even with just that, we're able to create quite a bit of tension, right? Let's try another sort of weird technique. Let's try slowing down the tempo before we get to the ending here. So that ought to be more than enough. So you see, even something like that can help to make the tension more intense. This is really the most classic one here, of just putting a little offbeat hi-hat. You know, we could also just open this hi-hat up, right? I'm going to do it fake, but hopefully this will work. Okay, so let's try like that. Yeah, so stuff like that will help. And the fun part too is like for example, increasing the subdivisions while you're going down in tempo. I'm going to make this a bit shorter. And let's just slowly fade this in. I think it'll have a nice effect. The other thing you can do is be a little bit more subtle with stuff like the bass line. So let's try something a little bit more subtle here. So So that's another way of doing that. Yeah, what are some more kind of uncommon ways of building tension? Blurring everything out. So let's try something like that, something that's going to really blur out the sound. So one way of doing that, I'm going to do this before the beat repeat. Okay, or before the drum buzz. Okay, so we're just going to bring that in, and when it gets to full or close to full, we're going to start increasing the spray so that the beat sort of falls apart, and then maybe at the end we'll pitch it down or something. Let's get rid of that, and I'm gonna go like this. Actually, this is a great knob to play with for increasing the sort of intensity. So that can be a way to do it. You know, if I was going to do that, one thing I might want to put in there would be one of those reverb swells, because that stuff is super handy for just adding a little je ne sais quoi. Right. So yeah, so stuff like that can be a really nice, a lot more subtle way of building up tension. So yeah, I hope that helps. Remember, tension and release, it's what it's all about, that balance between the two. Even in shorter sections, you can build up a little tension by just making some small changes. For example, here, right? You see those little modulations also create this like little bit of lumpiness in the perceived tension, and that will really help to carry your track along. Okay.
So there you have it. That's how you make tension in a track. At this point, I'd really like to thank my patrons on Patreon, because it's really from their support that I'm able to make these videos, and every little bit helps. So if you're able to help me out on Patreon, patreon.com/Woulg, any tier is really good. And I would like to thank certain patrons by name. The following patrons are in the highest tier, and therefore the most badass motherfuckers: Nicholas Balmat, Martin Blakemore, Son of an Engineer, Shadow Wanderer, Nacho May, Aaron Semidonmez, and Brocco Fancone. Thank you so much to those patrons. But, like I said, any amount helps. So let's name all the other ones too. Okay, so here we go. Aaron Wharton, Jim Larson, Michelle Nguyen, Cashew Cosmos, Travis Curtin, Erwin Vanderhost, Eduardo, Ben Cantil, Pierre Postman Colley, Stefan Mullenkamp, Heavy Hearted, Ollie Dutton, Laurent Mialon, Jake Leone, Agahorel, Justin Bieber, Clinch, Melds Cop, Brian, Matt McNall, Maxime Leduc, Nick Chavez, Jack, okay, Seb Roy, Elia Lechman, AP, Romanowicz, Cyan Finley, TQI, Marian Essel, Mac Benson, Gerald Liu, Stephen Duke, Arya Teti, Ruby Swan, Oliver Plock, Josh Vishnu, and Il Gates. Thank you so much to all of you.
Burn is all that's in.